once again, welcome to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today in the studio is Robert Solomon, art historian, the right holder of Joseph Stapleton Collection. Also joining me all the way from Barbados is Alicia Ford, my daughter. She's the managing director of Alicia's Art Line. I want to thank you both for joining me here today. And Robert, my first question goes out to you. I know you are a historian in art. You have been in this business for quite a bit. Tell me a little bit about your artwork and yourself, etc.
I studied at Pratt in the early 70s with several second-generation art historians, and one of them, a guy named Joseph Stapleton, Joe Stapleton, I had for several classes, and then he became my mentor for many years after I graduated. And for a long time, I've wanted to write a book about him, and I got that opportunity to start it as a thesis for my master's degree when I began in 2014, so 42 years after I graduated from Pratt. When I started the biography for my thesis, I wanted to see some of the drawings that were left over from his studio, and I went to Manhattan, was showed, drawings stacked one on top of another. I thought there were about maybe 2,500 or 3,000 drawings, and asked the family, which consists of a niece and two nephews, that's the remaining family from this artist who died in 1994, to bring all the drawings up to me. And over a 4-year period, there were a lot of arguments back and forth about who was going to pay for archival materials, because this work goes back to 1939. A lot of it is brittle, so it had to be taken care of. The family refused to pay for anything. And eventually, Duane Morris, a big legal firm, handled a final agreement that gave me right holder status of over 5,000 drawings of this artist that have never been seen. They were taken right out of his studio. Right now, I'm, the work's being cataloged and archived, and I'm in the process right now of meeting with directors and curators of various museums and galleries, and hopefully we'll get the first show in 50 years of this artist's work.
Well, nice. I mean, talking about the length of history of this collection, I believe that you should very well have it displayed in some famous museums around the place.
I'd love to have it in a famous museum.
Definitely. I mean, it's rich in history.
Right. And right now I'm focusing on the major galleries and museums within the universities around New England.
Yes.
So, for example, the Rose Art Museum at Brandeis would be a beautiful place to show it, or Bennington up in Vermont, which showed a lot of the art historian's work. Tufts University has a beautiful gallery over in Medford. So these are some of the people that I'll be contacting to see if they would like to have the first show of this artist's work in many years.
Yes. Okay, great, excellent. And Alicia, my question goes out to you. What really inspired you and really got you into art and poetry, etc.? What really give you that inspiration?
Well, I would say art for me started way back when I was in primary school. I always had this tendency of wondering, especially when you had like art classes, I always wanted to have like my coloring inside the lines and have it done properly and neat. And even at times I find myself like scribbling outside the book. But I took it almost seriously as I entered secondary school. Yeah, it was always something to bring me peace and happiness, to see like the finished product. Yeah.
Right. You had entered some exhibitions in Barbados. What was it really like?
Well, I have been entering NIFCA for a while now, but in 2016 was when I saw a great improvement when I became a finalist in NIFCA, that is National Independence Festival of Creative Arts. It's a culture, it happens annually, and it's a cultural event showcasing the different lines of art such as dance, literary arts, culinary arts, performing arts, visual arts, like where I'm in, like what I'm in. Yeah. So basically, what I did was I did my drawing, fill out an application form, register, enter my work for exhibition, and also for competition, because the competition as well, if you win, you get prizes, even scholarships. So yeah, I became a finalist, and that speaks good because some artists that enter don't even get their work at the exhibition level. So mine was out for when they have one of the show for the visual arts for the artists to see.
Okay, great, excellent. So, Robert, tell me, for young aspiring artists who are now trying to get themselves exposed even more, how would you reach out to those people? How would you encourage them the importance of art and why it is a great element that they should really get involved in? What would you have to say?
I would say the first thing to do is to hook into a professor of art or an instructor of art at a university, at a local university, and have them enjoy your work, see your work, and enjoy it. And then do exactly what you're doing, enter exhibitions. You know, sometimes they get expensive, and it adds up the more you do, but the more you can get exposure, that really works for you. And that's what I did when I first started right out of high school. I was in shows at, for example, at the Berkshire Museum at first, in the early 70s, then at the New Orleans Museum of Art, at the Atlanta High Museum, and a couple of others. But also that person that you link into, who has knowledge, who has connections, that's what you need as a new artist. For example, Joe Stapleton, who I studied with, and then he was a mentor of mine, introduced me to a guy named Ivan Karp. And Ivan Karp built the first, he used to work for Leo Castelli, which was a large gallery in New York City, and then he opened his own gallery in Soho, and it was the first real commercial gallery in the Soho area. And he showed a lot of new work. And in 1974, when I graduated from Pratt, Joe Stapleton introduced me to Ivan Karp then, and Ivan Karp watched my work develop. And in 1978, he gave me a show at the gallery. Now, getting a show at a gallery doesn't mean the gallery's going to take you on. You have to keep working, you have to keep their interest. And I had an opportunity to become a gallery artist, but I then had 2 children, and I had to go to work, so I missed that opportunity. But I continued to paint. But the whole idea is that you have to make connections. In today's art world, it's really about connections. In the 70s, you used to be able to walk around and show your portfolio to gallery directors. You can't do that today. They're only interested in who's connected. And the more you get into shows, the more visibility you can get. Then when you walk into a gallery, that person has seen your work already. So that's really important.
Excellent. And one of the questions I would love to ask you, because I know you had encountered a situation recently, years back, where you would have experienced adhesive arachnitis.
Right.
And that would have affected you some way. Did that have an impact on your artwork for a period of time?
It did in a couple of ways. First of all, this happened. This was an accident at a major Boston hospital, a radiation accident that caused this disease, adhesive arachnitis. And over a period of years, I've lost my mobility. It has intense neuropathic pain. I've had over 97 spinal injections. In March, they put in a spinal cord stimulator inside me, which has really mediates the pain, and it's very well. But while I was in school, my spine was twisting and going down. because of this disease.
Okay.
The nerve roots were impacting the spine. And the work I was doing in my studio reflected that. And you saw some of that in my apartment this morning. It's very intense, built up with oil and wax. And there's actually a work of mine at Newton City Hall on the first floor going towards the War Memorial Auditorium, and I urge your viewers to go take a look at it.
Yes.
I'd love to hear from them what they think about it. It's a work that my research on color is all about how color speaks, what color language is all about.
Yes.
And I believe, first of all, I'm a Goethe color theorist.
Okay.
I studied with a color theorist in the 70s after I graduated from Pratt, a well-known color theorist who was the director of painting at Queens College, and learned about Goethe's ideas about the influence of emotion on color.
Yes.
Or how color responds to emotion, the other way around. And I also learned that there's this space, it's called the viewer's space, that if you have a painting on the wall and you want somebody to look at it, you have to think about what that space is between the artist, the work of art, and the viewer. That's really, really important. So that's how my work developed over time.
Yes.
And you know, but then I ran into the Stapleton artwork, and I've sort of not done much of my own work since then.
Yes. Okay. So Alicia, tell me, what is your biggest art accomplishment thus far, and what areas do you really specialize in?
My biggest art accomplishment this far, I would have to say, is the CM NIFCA, being a NIFCA Visual Art finalist. Yeah, that really is my biggest.
That was your biggest moment, and there's any specific line that you specialize in?
I specialize in drawing. Drawing is my favorite. I love drawing, and I also have experience in printmaking, graphic design, and I want to develop on going to painting.
Okay, so what are your plans look like for the future?
Well, as it relates to art, my plan and goals are to have an art show, continue to build my catalog and have an art show. And something in the future I would like to hold art classes, especially for young kids, help them develop their young artistic skills. That they too, if they have interest in the subject matter, can become artists as well.
Okay, and I also recognize that you are into poetry. As a matter of fact, you're thinking about publishing your first poetry book. What is your scope on that?
Yeah, well, just like art, poetry has been a part of my life since I was very young in primary school. My love for poetry developed back when I was class 4, which is the last stages of getting ready to go into secondary school. During the last class 4, we had to do, the class required to do a poem, and it had to be entitled, "What Does Barbados Means to Me?" And we were asked to complete the poem right there on the spot. So I always like poetry in terms of like when the words rhyme at the end from line to line. So writing that was easy for me. However, I would say the hard part was when after we submitted our poetry for competitions, we didn't have any feedback. And you know, for somebody that liked the subject matter, I would have glad for feedback to, you know, improve in the future. And plus too, it was, I actually, that was the only copy I had, so not getting it back, knowing you like it, you couldn't use it for future reference. So that was the negative drawback. But however, it was good because it inspired me to write. And then my first poem became similar in title to that poem, but instead of I writing "What Barbados Means to Me," it was kind of like an extension now, because it was "What Barbados Means," a tourist asks, "What does Barbados mean to me?" So instead of just writing normally "What Barbados means to me" as the one in the class setting, I then wrote what Barbados means to me in a conversation with a tourist. So it was a different spin from the one back then. And then when I write it, after I had finished it, I let my uncle take a listen, and he said, well, this sounds really good. And that encouragement, from then on, that encouragement told me, well, what you doing? See how much poems I could write.
Okay.
And then from writing more and more, I said, well, I just can't let it stop here. I got to write enough to get a book.
Okay.
And then, as I accumulated more and more, I also had this idea to put inspirational quotes that I also formulate and conceptualize on my own to the back of the book, but so it will have like a variation. It will only be poetry, but you have quotes about life too. I could give you an insight into what type of poems I write. I would say that my poems are very dimensional. It touches a lot of areas about life. For instance, as I alluded to previously, one of the sections would have been about my country, because that's how my beginnings developed. So I have a section which should be dedicated to the culture and different aspects, so you can learn about my country. However, it's diverse in terms of it has some that speaks to the youth. So you have dealing with like juvenile delinquency, abuse, them sort of issues that are always up in society, to help curb and share life experiences, and also to help with those problems. There's another section after that, which will be some advice for parents. Is to help parents deal with these same issues that I speak to in the previous section. Then I also have some for like fun and relax, so it's not always serious. It has some to relax. And then I also spoke about life experiences to like inspire people, can overcome problems, learn from you, learn their experiences. And there's also a section where I write for my parents, but obviously that section is very short. A point for my mom, a point for my dad. Yeah.
So you would say that this is more diverse in nature, and it captured a wide scope of different kinds of poetry.
Yeah. So it's not just a poem book, and it's just poem. And my poem book deals with life. People can relate to it because it's everyday happening, as I previously mentioned, in terms of like the same substance abuse, all sorts of things. They talk about people learning from, like, have one entitled "You're a friend and your enemy," learning like how people could be your friends and your enemies. So it touches a lot of different issues that is a part of today's world. And I would say love poetry too, because I see it as a medium to, as I say, to deal with these problems. And most people do it through public speaking and counseling at schools, but it's also a way of getting over your message across to help improve the life for others. Well, at least you hope it do so.
Okay, very, very good.
Yeah.
Right. So
Can't
Robert,
wait for it to be published.
Yeah.
great. My question goes back to you. With so much years of experience in art and collections of art, what kind of legacy you would want to leave for future generations to build on in terms of the art world? Because art is a huge subject. It has so many different segments to it.
Okay.
But the visual art is something that has been going on for centuries. I mean,
Right. I would like to get to show a couple of Joe
definitely.
Stapleton's drawings,
Yes.
but in answer to your question, what I was talking about, this viewer space.
Okay.
There's in the graduate school I went to, there were graduate students who really didn't know where their artwork came from.
Yes.
And that's a result of art schools today allowing so many different electives for art history.
Yes.
And not having a structural base of certain, or having a certain, studying certain periods,
Right.
okay? So that many of the students that I graduated with never knew about the mid-20th century American art history.
Yes.
And that's when New York became the center of the art world.
Yes.
It took it away from Paris. And many students don't understand that today.
Okay.
So my legacy would be that, you know, hopefully in the future art schools will recognize that even as graduate students, people need to understand
Yes.
where that art comes from. And the second part would be that people really need, art students really need to understand color. They can't just slap it on the canvas.
Right.
They really need to understand that color has this language.
Yes.
And understanding how color language impacts the viewer will make for better art.
Beautiful.
And that's what I hope people will take from this.
Well, I know you have some artwork
Yes.
next to you. I don't know if you want to just lift up some shot to the
Sure.
camera and probably
I'd like
make
to-
a few statements about
Sure.
it.
Joe Stapleton, among the 5,500 drawings,
Yes.
there are probably 9 or 10 different styles of drawings, going back to the early 1930s when he was a teenager.
Yes.
There's work from when he was studying drawing under the WPA, which was one of Franklin Roosevelt's programs. There's work from when he was in the war in
Yes.
Japan, in Tokyo, when he was an intelligence officer for General MacArthur.
Okay.
And then it goes beyond that. When he was in high school, he studied Japanese calligraphy. Outside of high school, he would go from high school every day to the New York Public Library
Nice.
and teach himself Japanese calligraphy.
Okay.
So, for example, I have a sample of his calligraphic work, and it's mostly done on New York Times pages.
Okay.
So you can see here, you can pick that up. You see.
Yes, we can see it. Yeah, it's on the camera.
And this one here. And then this,
Beautiful work.
yeah. So he integrated the calligraphy into his artwork. He also could write forwards and backwards without thinking about it. He would just wouldn't stop in between, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
A lot of his self-portraits have writing all over them.
Yes.
In reverse.
Okay.
But another area of work that he did was portraits. And these are beautiful. They're poster paints on,
Yes.
Some of them are on vellum, some of them are on newsprint. And there are over 100 of these.
Okay. Nice.
Give you another sample of those. Something like this. He did this one on New York Times paper. Joe Stapleton drew on everything he could find. He
That's
drew
good.
on matchbooks, on paper towel rolls, on curtains, on toilet paper rolls.
Yes.
Everything he could find, he drew on.
That's great.
Oh, nice. Really?
Here's another portrait. And he was also influenced by Gorky and very much by Picasso as well. And I'll show you
Yes,
one of
her
those.
Picasso, who was a famous.
So people ask, well, why don't we know the name Joe Stapleton? If I go on the internet, why can't I find his name
Yes.
other than under Robert Solomon? Well, that's because there were 450 second-generation abstract expressionists who
Yes.
poured into New York after the war.
Yes.
And they were all looking to succeed. Only a handful of these artists succeeded. And Joe Stapleton, there were a number of issues why he didn't succeed. There were opportunities that he missed. He drank a lot. He drank 24 hours a day.
Wow.
Most of the abstract expressionists would work all day and then they would go to the Cedar Bar and drink at night.
Yes.
But Joe Stapleton had a bottle with him all the time, even when he was teaching. It was not uncommon for him to be inebriated when he came into class. He taught both at Pratt and at the Art Students League, and last October I gave a lecture on his work and showed his work
Yes.
to students at the Art Students League on October 10th. And they were amazed they hadn't seen this work of his, even though he taught there. So this is really an exciting
Yes,
project,
definitely.
and I hope to get a lot of people interested in it.
Exactly. It's really great work.
Yes,
Great work.
I'm enjoying it.
That's beautiful. So Alicia, what how would you inspire young people like yourself to get involved in the visual arts? I mean, look at it's really beautiful. I can remember as a Barbadian, and also even my time coming up, that was one of the main cores that we would have studied at school. Almost there was a day specifically for art.
Yeah.
What would be your word to any young person who may want to get involved in art?
I would tell them to firstly seek out someone who has experience in art, like their art teacher if they're still at school, or if they're not at school, find some program or training facility where they can develop their skills. And even when you are not developing your skills at the same time, you continue to do it at home. It's something you gotta constantly do to build up confidence and to bring out the best in you, in something that you could do and stop. And yes, you can do it and stop and come back, but if you want to be at a high level, you gotta continue to work on your craft, ask questions from professionals, go to art galleries and be inspired by the work of others, and draw inspiration from things like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
So I assume though in most artists there's something in common. And what really would you see from a historian standpoint that how art really, and almost in every dimension, art has an impact in bringing people together?
Well, first of all, artists know the truth, right? We know what the truth is, because we can see beyond.
Yes.
Yeah.
An artist goes to a museum and takes in a painting where just a viewer, just somebody attending the museum would walk past the paintings and they'd look at the name tags on next to the paintings, and then they would step back and look at the painting and try to figure out how the name tag, what's the name of the painting, how does that, what am I looking at? Does that relate to the name? Well, that's the wrong way to look at art. Don't even look at those tags. If I had a museum, there'd be no name tags. Okay? Because people should stand in front of a piece of art and bring their whole history into the work.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Well, on that note being said, we have come to the last minute in our program. Alicia, it was really a pleasure having you here.
Thanks.
And speaking on your artwork and your publication for your future book. Historian Robert Solomon, it was really a pleasure and honor having you here to really shed some light upon some of the great work that you're collecting from Stapleton. I think it will go a long way continuously. Just find a way of leaving it as a legacy for future generations to succeed and build on. So until that, I want to say to all those who have been tuning in, I want to say have a happy day. And tune in once more. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Understood.org, a free online resource for parents of kids with learning and attention issues, with personalized recommendations, tools, and expert advice.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.